Hi everybody, John back again. In this video I'm going to talk about and show my collection of Who albums, or albums by The Who. A month or two ago, I think it was now, Stevie's Vinyl Cupboard expressed a lot of enthusiasm for The Who he describes as being the greatest rock band in the world. And I said to him that I've got a few albums by The Who myself and I would show them, and so that's what I intend to do now. I've got one or two perhaps that are perhaps a little bit different. I mean, The Who, they've released a lot of records, and yeah, they're not all the sort of run-of-the-mill things, but so what do you think? So I'll start off by showing this. This is a record called The Beat by The Who. It is really their very first album, this one. I don't have a copy of that, but I have a copy of this. I picked this one up in Sweden when I lived there. I've said many times before, I think around about, well, at least a quarter these days. It used to be around about a third, but a quarter of these records that I have behind me I would have picked up from the Salvation Army charity shop in Rupston, just outside of Stockholm, where I used to live. I lived there for a great many years, and it was a fantastic place to go and buy records. When nobody else wanted to buy records, I used to go along and pick up things like this for 10, 15 krona sometimes, just very little money, because no one really cared about records. And people used to scoff at me and say, "John, you're not still buying those scratchy old records, are you?" Well, I did. I continued to buy the scratchy old records, although they're not scratchy really. You just got to clean them and treat them nicely. So this is one of those ones. So Music für Alle is a German series, and they released a series of records by different artists, and I guess it's a bit like, yeah, maybe it's a bit like the British equivalent would be sort of the MFP, perhaps. I'm not sure, but so this was a German Music für Alle series, and it's their first album. There you go. I'll show you. There you go. Here, so it's sort of paired up with Decca. You can see that. It's funny to think I had this for a long time, and I didn't know that it was the first Who album. I just assumed it was sort of like an early compilation or something like that. This is my next one. So this is another foreign series. This, I can't speak French. Disque d'Or in French is The Who, and this is a sort of a compilation. It's a compilation of the first side, or side face one, it says, is a compilation of tracks from their album The Who Sell Out, without all of the kind of the sort of nerdy jokey bits sort of in between the songs. And then the face two is a compilation of tracks from a quick one. Here you go. Again, I didn't know that that's what this was. I had it for many years and didn't really know much about what the compilation was. It's on Impact. On the dusty side, unfortunately, but yeah, I haven't played these records for a long time. So now we have a run of fairly regular Who albums. This is the Who's Tommy. I'm sure most people have seen this sort of great extended album cover. I first got this on CD. I went through a stage when I'd lived in Sweden for a while where for some reason I had this sort of drive to listen to a lot of the sort of the classic records that perhaps the generation of kids before me held up and sort of said were fantastically great records. And The Who were one band that I gone into through that way, and so I went and bought up the CD of Tommy. Completely fell in love with it. It was amazing. Well, I hadn't been listening to this before. And then, of course, some weeks or months after that, I went out and bought Quadrophenia, and it just blew my mind. So the next record I'm going to show here is this. This is The Who live at Leeds. This is only the single, well, not only the single record, but only the sort of the non-gatefold sleeve record on Polydor. This is my first exposure to The Who live at Leeds, and of course anyone that knows the album knows that it is fantastic. You know, there aren't many live albums in the world that can come close to this. And I'd heard all the sort of the stories about how it was originally released as a gatefold sleeve, and it came with all sorts of special stuff. And I went to a yard sale in America. I used to go to lots of yard sales in America, buying up people's records again. You know, they didn't want scratchy old records. Why would I keep this? Oh, here, you can have it for $50 type thing. And this particular yard sale was, I've made a video about this before. It was really sad. It was two middle-aged women, I suppose, and they were selling off their blind father's record collection. And I appeared there. Most of it was jazz, and it's really annoying because I didn't know anything about jazz, so I didn't waste much time looking at the jazz records. There were a few crates of odds and sods, if you like, you know, odd records that this man had collected that weren't particular jazz, so I focused mainly on those. And yeah, these two middle-aged ladies were selling their father's record collection because he had to go into a home. Really sad and tragic, and I just felt like, God, you know, this man, he collected these records the way we do, you know, we love these things. And his daughters had absolutely no understanding of what they were doing. They were just doing everything they could do to make a quick buck because they had to pay for his care home, I suppose. So they were selling his records for $1 each. $1 each. You know, if they had really sort of considered it and stood back, they probably could have made a lot of money on his collection. I mean, he had a few thousand in his collection that they were selling off for $1 each. You know, but if they had have been a little bit more, you know, savvy about it, they could have made a fortune off this that would have gone a long way to sort of care for this man's, you know, his care. I just think it was tragic that the poor chap was in a home and his daughters were selling off his music collection. That's heartbreaking. Anyway, I picked up this from that yard sale, and this is the original gatefold sleeve, beautiful pristine copy of Live at Leeds. Yeah, look at that, it's just gorgeous. Paid $1 for this. And all the records that they were selling, they were all top-notch, beautiful records. This guy wasn't just a casual collector. He knew what he liked. And like I said, I didn't know anything about jazz, so I didn't buy anything, but I could see people were coming along, picking up armfuls and armfuls of albums, skipping, kicking their heels back to their car, thinking, yeah, bought some fantastic things and it hasn't cost me anything. Now in this comes all of the famous facsimiles and photographs of the Who that go together with this release. It's incredible, you know, all sorts of fun things in here. I haven't looked at it for a few years. But they're all here, all the bits, and yeah. This. So that's one of my top releases by The Who that I have in my collection. And the incredible story of how I came by it is one that when I think about it, it brings a lump to my throat, because I just feel that, first, tragically, the poor man had sort of couldn't take care of himself anymore. Secondly, his daughters, obviously, they'd scoffed at him through his record collecting, in the same way that maybe my children might scoff at my collecting. And because they didn't understand it, because they didn't appreciate it, they were flogging it off for pennies. When, with a bit more common sense, they could have, got a lot more out of that and helped it to help him. Yeah, sad story. Anyway, the next record I'm going to show is The Who's Next. Got a couple of copies of this. It's such a brilliant album, let's face it. It is fantastic. So if you're going to have 2 copies of any record, you might as well have 2 copies of this. Yeah, enough said. If you don't have this in your collection, you should have. Yeah, Well, Dale, Gatefold Dale. Sorry, I can't remember your channel right now. I wonder if you have this, or if you've, ejected this from your collection. I hope you don't, because it's a fantastic record. I hope this doesn't go the way that Close to the Edge went. There you go. And after that comes Quadrophenia. Again, this is another one that I picked up at the shop in Ropston near Stockholm. Myrorna, which is what the name of Salvation Army charity shop is in Sweden. Myrorna translates to sort of the ants trail, if you like. The idea that ants are bringing back stuff to the nest, and that's where you go to the charity shop, bits and stuff in there. I probably paid, I don't know, maybe £2 or £3 for this, and it's a brilliant album. Everybody should have this in their collection, in my view. Odds and Sods by The Who. Some Track Records. Comes with a poster. Again, this is another one that I bought from the charity shop in Stockholm. Track Records. And I predict, just like, the days where no one was interested in buying records. At the moment, no one is interested in buying CDs from charity shops, but I predict there will come a day. There will come a day when they're just as sought after, and people are clamouring over to pay lots of money for them. That day hasn't come yet, and I don't know when it will come, but it will come. The Who by Numbers. Another one that I picked up at that charity shop. Some Polydor. Who Are You? To be honest with you, by this stage my interest in the Who's music starts to wane a little bit. There are some good tracks on these records, but they're not as consistent as sort of some of their better albums that they made earlier on. The Who, It's Hard. I think it's the first album they released after Keith Moon died, isn't it? Oh, I don't have face dances. I don't know why. Haven't come across it, and so I don't have it. I don't know if I see it, you know, and at a car boot sale or something like that, I'll pick it up and I'll be really happy for it. But I don't think I'm going to go looking for it, to be honest with you, unless I'm feeling particularly flush or something like that. This next one is the Who Joined Together Rarities. Now, this is an Australian edition, or it says here it's marketed in Australasia. So yeah, a little bit special, I suppose. 1982. Some Polydor. Yeah, and this is another one that I picked up in Sweden at the same charity shop. I mean, I didn't pick all these up at the same time. It's just over many years, you know, these records present themselves, and I know that the Who were a great band, and if something comes along that I didn't have, I would pick it up and bring it home. Now this is where that's where the Who fans spit teeth with envy, I suppose. I'll say this came out. I think this came out in '88 or something, didn't it? Yeah, it did, 1988, and this was sort of publicised on the television. This is the only Who album that I own that I paid sort of any amount of money for, any sort of full price. I bought this from the shop, and in 1988 I would have been 18. I wouldn't have known much about the Who other than, well, there's a few tracks on here that they played on the television advert, and I thought, well, I'll give that one a go, you know. Got it. It's a nice compilation. Got lots of information inside, and obviously being, you know, Who's Best, again it's on Polydor. It's going to have the sort of the wide range of you know, the best of some of their music. So I went and bought it. I probably paid what the LPs cost in 1988, about £7 or £8, I suppose. And I dragged this off to college with me, which is why it's probably a bit rough and ready. And there you go. So there's the Who's Best. Now the last two I'm going to show is one CD and one album, one record, Bootlegs. I picked this up in America. I've shown this before. It's been a subject of a long video as well on my channel, about a few years ago, I suppose. There was a guy up in Yorkshire way who had a competition, and I answered his competition by showing this. He asked, you know, if there was a flood or a fire, which record would you rush in and grab and save? One record that you go in and save out of your whole collection. And I said this one, purely because, and I explained this in my entry, I know that it's rare, I know that it's particularly sought after. I paid $1 for this in a yard sale in California. I lived there for a few years. But I've got good confirmation from sort of Who collectors that this is worth a considerable amount, and lots of people would like to have it if they could get their hands on it. And so I would rush in and grab this and hope that I could flog it for enough to begin buying back copies of my other records. I don't know how much it's worth, but I did write to like a collectors group on the internet at the time. This was way back in 2015. Anyway, so yeah, I keep the email and in the record, and sort of I like to read it because it reminds me of this time, and also it's kind of a nice thing to have. So this chap, I wrote to him, described the record, you know, gave him all the details, what the track listing was, and that sort of stuff. And he wrote back and says, "Hello John, congratulations, you've discovered a really rare bootleg." And he goes on to tell me about, you know, information about it and other things, and basically leaves the door open for me if I should want to sell it to him or any other collectors. Of course I don't. I'll show you what the records look like. Pull them out. side 3, side 4, sort of yellow labels. Side 1, pink label, and side 2. There you go. So that's my first bootleg by The Who. And this last one isn't especially rare, I'm sure. It's on CD. It's an Italian bootleg. It says recorded live in San Francisco in 1969. Total running time is 53 minutes and 40. And there's a date here, it's 1992, so I'm assuming that was when it was illegally released. That's the inside there. I'll show you the little, it's called Accept No Substitutes. And there's the inside. There you go. So there's my Who collection. What more would I like to get? I'm sure I had a copy of that compilation that they had with the pinball machine on the cover exploding. I thought I had a copy of that, but I can't find it. So maybe I passed it along, I don't know, or maybe I just dreamt that I had it and I didn't actually have it. And I don't have Face Dances, and I know that The Who, or at least Roger Daltrey and Pete Townsend, have released one or two things together under the banner of The Who since then. I don't have those, but if I see them in a charity shop or something, I might pick them up. Well, I will pick them up, but I'm not going to go searching for them and paying lots of money. What else? Well, I've got one or two solo albums by Pete Townsend, and one or two, well, at least one by Roger Daltrey. Yeah, I can't tell you, I don't have much more than that sort of thing, other than what I've shown. Okay, well, I hope this was mildly interesting to you guys out there, and I enjoyed pulling them out and showing them. I might even slip in one or two little needle drops in here if I can, if YouTube allows me. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Check out my next video. Bye.